Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for being on the Performance Podcast. I'm so excited to have you. And we'd love to know for our audience a little bit about your background. Dr. Nicky Keay here wrote the Hormones book for women. Very interesting. Big background in research on hormones impacting women, especially regarding our physical performance, and worked with like the dancing world and athletes. So who are you, and tell us more about you?
Well, listen, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me to come on to the podcast. I'm really excited, talking about, and that's the title of my book, Health, Hormones and Human Potential. So each of us are, individuals, but each of us, we all share the same objective. We want to get the most out of life. Yeah. Whether that's physical performance, like we were saying earlier, performance in whatever your field is if it's at work, your business, or if it's, and as well, maybe sporting performance. So absolutely, we all want to aspire to this. And I've spent a lot of my, I'm quite old now, so I spent a lot of my career as a doctor. That is it's my personal objective, of course, but also to try and help and support those trying to achieve that. So it's about, being as healthy and fit as we possibly can. So, and that's actually, I think, probably the main reason I wanted to study medicine in the first place, because I used to, as a youngster at school, I was involved in lots of sports. I was a competitive swimmer, played on the tennis team. And of course, dancing, you've already mentioned it. Ballet is and still is my main passion. And it was really, I was always asking myself, I want to be the best I can when I'm doing a dance. It just fascinated me we all know that if you, for example, train and do exercise, that's going to make you fitter. But it puzzled me, what is it that helps us to adapt and become better and improve our performance and be healthy? What is going on? We all know that happens, but what's going on? And that led me to, number one, study medicine, because I wanted to find out more. I wanted to learn more for myself. And then it led me to the fact that hormones actually are pretty crucial in this whole process, because the word hormone derives from the ancient Greek meaning setting in motion. So that's exactly what hormones do. They set in motion, they bring to life our DNA. So we all have the blueprint for life DNA, everyone knows, but actually, what directs that? How do we unlock our potential? And that's thank you to our hormones, you see.
Can you touch base, because the concept of hormones, I think we all understand a little bit the concept, but how it really plays into our bodies. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Sure. So a hormone, if I say the word hormone to you, you might think, it's some chemical messenger goes around in the bloodstream. And that's true. That tells you how it goes around, which is already a very good way of going around the body, by the way. If you're in the bloodstream, you're going to get access to all the cells in the body. So that's fine. That's what a hormone is. It is invisible. You can't touch it, which is always slightly tantalizing, and why I think it's misunderstood. And, we don't think about this so much, what a hormone does. But it's that thing about what the hormone does that is the crucial thing. And the thing I've been I continue every day to be amazed, even when I discuss it. It's just like incredible that, like I said, these chemical messengers, different structures, they can be proteins, they can be steroids anyway. This hormone goes around in the bloodstream, it goes into the cells, and like I said, it directs the DNA. It goes to a particular gene and says, right, I need you to produce more muscle protein right now, because this person has just done a ballet class, and actually, we need more muscle in the calf muscle, thank you, for next time, so she can get fitter. You see, going back to how do we improve our performance? That's the message, and that's the action that the hormone brings about. So that, in essence, for any hormone, I given the example of a muscle protein. I think other people might think, if I say hormone, people may think about insulin. Insulin controls our blood glucose. So the hormones are doing two things. First of all, they're just keeping us healthy. They're keeping the blood glucose levels stable. keeping, if you're a woman, keeping your menstrual cycle hopefully regular, the most beautiful form of choreography of the hormones there. Wow. Anyway, so they're doing the maintenance, right, just to keep you going and healthy. But when we're talking about performance, we want to not, of course, health is the fundamental. We all have to be healthy, but then to perform physically, mentally, whatever it is, when I say performance, whatever your objectives are, that again comes down to the hormones. So they are going a step further than just keeping us healthy. They're actually helping us to improve and reach our full potential. So I hope I've already convinced you that hormones are fascinating, and it helps you understand why that is my chosen area of medicine that I've been, like you say, studying, applying in the clinical situation to people who come and say, look, how can I be better? I suppose you can say.
Yeah.
And also, research, because we need to know more and more in order to really understand it and give the best possible advice and information to people how to harness their hormones. We need to understand exactly what it is that will support this incredible network within our body.
And I think many of us grasp the concept of male hormones better than female. So I'm a man, I take testosterone, and I build up my muscle mass, etc. But I find that for us women, it's actually more complicated for us to understand estrogen and progesterone and their impact and how they vary, etc. Can you help us understand a little bit this maze?
Yeah, women are much more interesting. What can I say? I know,
Exactly.
from a hormone point of view, all the hormones are talking to each other, by the way, inside the body. They're not just one thing. It's not estrogen by itself. It's got to be part of a whole team, if you will. Mm-hmm. And out of all the teams of hormones in the body, the team of the female menstrual cycle, those hormones are absolutely, without a doubt, the most beautiful, complicated, as I say, intricate choreography. So that, and by the way, Horme is the Greek goddess of effort, energy, and action. Right?
Oh, I love that.
So if ever you're told, oh, you're hormonal, please take that as a compliment. It means you're being compared to the Greek goddess of effort, energy, and action. So what I suggest to as women, we need to embrace and love our inner Greek goddess and the hormones, but it is tricky because they are complicated and everyone will be subtly different. Mm-hmm. So although I think, if you think of the menstrual cycle, well, I suppose my brain's a bit weird. I immediately come up, I have it in my mind, this is the beautiful fluctuation of hormones over the cycle. But that is just a general plan of what will happen. But for each individual woman, there will be differences in the timing of when these hormones are released, the estrogen and progesterone from the ovaries, also the levels these hormones get to, and crucially, her personal biological response to these. So two women with exactly the same level, say, of progesterone during the luteal phase of the cycle after she's ovulated, one woman might say, oh, I feel fine. The other woman might suffer quite badly with PMS, premenstrual symptoms, you see. So I think that's why women are definitely more intricate choreography with their hormones, and therefore it does make it a little bit tricky, I have to say, because there's this individual variation. But that's why I love it. I love detective work.
Yeah. And can you do us, I know it's way more in depth of a topic than that, but a crash course of ovulation, peak, going to the luteal phase, more restorative, the PMS, and then getting out of the periods with the follicular phase and this rebirth. What is your perception of these different phases of the cycle?
Yeah. So this is sort of the general plan or script or orchestra score, whatever you want to describe it. So the menstrual cycle actually starts with menstruation, with the period, with the bleed, okay? And that typically lasts to even 7 days, average 5. So anyway, and at that point, when you're shedding the lining of your uterus, the endometrial lining during that period, actually the hormones are sort of a low level because now we're sort of pressing restart to start the whole thing. Once menstruation has completed, then we are now we are already actually from the very start in what's called the follicular phase, because the follicular phase means the follicles in the ovaries, the baby eggs, they're vying with each other. Which one's going to be ovulated? Me. Anyway, so we see a big increase in estradiol, the most active form of estrogen, which really goes rapidly up towards the end of that follicular phase. And that rapid increase in estradiol by the now dominant follicle, the one that's ruling the roost, that one will trigger, the estrogen level will trigger ovulation. So you'll see next some spikes in FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, the LH surge, as we call it. And those two hormones, FSH and LH, produced by the conductor of the endocrine orchestra, the pituitary gland in the brain. So the ovaries are telling the conductor of the endocrine orchestra, the pituitary gland, right, can you send us now a signal, because we got this follicle all ready to be ovulated. So that's what happens at ovulation. LH peak, surge, and then the egg will be released from the ovary and it starts to go down the fallopian tube towards the uterus. Once you have released that egg, we now enter the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. So-called luteal because the remnants of the follicle, the eggs come out, but the remnants of the follicle, that turns into what's called the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum starts producing the next big ovarian hormone, progesterone. So the first, the follicular phase is really sort of, if we want to sort of say what's the most dominant hormone there, you would say probably that really steep increase in estradiol. But once you've ovulated, then the progesterone becomes dominant. Estradiol is still there for sure. There's another little increase in estradiol, but progesterone now from very low levels, less than 1 nanomole per liter, now go up to 30 or more nanomoles per liter. So there's a big increase in progesterone in that luteal phase. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the progesterone, the word progesterone comes from progestation. So it's preparing the body for being pregnant. So it's making the endometrial lining nice and juicy and welcoming if the egg gets fertilized. And also it has metabolic effects on us, which is why we can feel maybe not so good, like you say, maybe, and also your body temperature goes up, increased metabolic rate. So that's the theory behind the ovulation thermometer. You see your temperature go up, and this can sometimes disturb sleep. So in general terms, sometimes for some women, that luteal phase can be a little bit tricky. You're just feeling a little bit sluggish, maybe not so energetic, whatever. But then if the egg isn't fertilized, then what will happen is the corpus luteum will disintegrate, progesterone levels will go down, and now we start the whole thing again. Go back to the beginning, menstruation. So that's how the cycle looks, but how the woman experiences that cycle will vary from individual to individual. For some, it can be the menstruation itself can be really painful and uncomfortable and all that sort of thing. And there are some simple self-help things you can do there. Doing gentle exercise being shown to help. Of course, making sure you're hydrating and taking iron and maybe anti-inflammatories. That increase in progesterone at the end of the follicular phase, theoretically, that you should be feeling at your best then. I say theoretically, because it won't be exactly for all women. Yes. It was a professional female cyclist that said, actually, this was the worst time of the cycle for her. But because she had heard, you should be feeling amazing, she thought there was something wrong with her. So don't worry if that's not the good time, but if it is, go for it. Use that energy.
That's a very good point. We actually see in our data that some women, their readiness score is the worst at ovulation. Is that because of the switch of hormones? How can you?
Yes, I think so. I think that it could be because the estrogen is going up. And like we said, your individual sensitivity to that, as it goes really high, estrogen is meant to be sort of the energy giving hormone, if you will. But actually, maybe too much is too much. And then also it does, you're right, come down quite sharply when ovulation occurs. So there is a big change of the hormones there. So again, maybe that's the reason why we don't fully understand it, but just to point out that the main thing is to track it for you and get to know your own cycle. Yeah.
And you said something that I find really interesting. I froze twice my eggs. So into the artificial process of trying to grow more follicles. And when
Yes.
you were saying like each follicle, like I want to be the one
Yes,
picked by
exactly.
the egg, and in this artificial phase where I've tracked. So for the women out there who are going through IVF or just egg
Mm-hmm.
freezing process, which is the same beginning, I find it really helpful to see on the scan how the follicles grow, because each month, I mean, obviously one is
Yeah.
artificial because we want more follicles
Yeah,
and
yeah.
have more eggs inside, but I could really see them growing, getting an egg inside, and then continue growing, which is the same principle with only
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. They're
With
all competing to be the chosen one.
yeah,
But like you say, if you either for IVF or just ovulation induction, you'll probably get more. And it's actually why, because I had to have ovulation induction, and actually you don't want to be given too much, because otherwise that's could lead to multiple eggs being
yeah,
released and multiple births. So, so you have to be, but quite careful not to give too much, but this is the interesting thing. We can try and mimic so many things, but actually the thing that does this best is the body itself, the
yeah.
pituitary gland, the endocrine orchestra. That's the one that, does it best. But absolutely, it's very interesting. You can actually see, if you've ever had that ultrasound scan, you can see all the eggs lining up and competing.
Yeah.
It's a competition.
Exactly. And thanks. It's fascinating always to have also a refresh. And I've had this question quite often, but like now in the past few days, I had three women coming to me saying, "Oh, I'm active. I'm doing sports. I'm taking the pill. Does it impact my performance? Should I change? What do you recommend?" I'm not a doctor, so I can't recommend anything. I have an opinion for myself and for what works for my own body. But what do you think of the different type of contraceptives, the pros, the cons, and also like just really to try to understand the impact on our hormones of taking hormonal birth controls versus non-hormonal birth controls? Yeah, I would love your thoughts on that.
Mm. Well, I think the first important thing to say, Ellen, is that it's every woman's choice.
Mm.
What form of contraception do you want to use? So that's kind of like the first question. And actually, if possible, because I've just described the amazing, intricate choreography of your female hormones, actually, if possible, barrier methods are definitely worth considering. Mm-hmm. Condoms are the only form of contraception that will also protect you against STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. So condoms. Copper coil is also non-hormonal. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at least consider those as a starting point. And then if we go on to what are the hormonal-based choices, you can broadly divide them into those which contain synthetic progesterone, just synthetic progesterone, and those that contain a combination of estrogen and progesterone. So the best known of those combined ones is the combined oral contraceptive pill, also known as the birth control pill in America, right? Mm-hmm. So now you've got the choice. Which of those ones do you want? So if we talk about the progesterone only ones, some of them are said not to fully suppress your internal production of female hormones, like the Mirena coil. Okay. And the advantage of the Mirena coil is that you don't get any sort of bleeding on that at all. So, for example, I work with dancers, like you mentioned, and if you got to wear a white tutu when you're doing swan lake, then actually not having any bleeding, generally, and some will, might be a thought, okay? And it doesn't suppress your own hormones. However, there are some progesterone-only contraceptions that definitely do suppress all your hormones. These are the depot ones and the implant. So in that sense, they're more similar to the combined ones, which do also suppress your hormones. So what does that look like? So we talked about the beautiful choreography of the female hormones. If you take one of these contraceptions, like the combined one, or sometimes the progesterone only, what do the hormones look like there? They're completely flat. I repeat, completely flat. That's how they're so effective at contraception. They suppress what your pituitary gland is sending out, FSH and LH are really low, and also they totally stop production of estrogen and progesterone, and also testosterone, by the way. So there are some situations where actually, from a medical point of view, we want to suppress all the hormones like that. And we would give the combined contraceptive pill or suggest it. Not so much for contraception, but for example, endometriosis, really painful periods, especially, but pain in general in the pelvic area, that is driven by the fluctuation of the female hormones. So if we suppress all the female hormones, actually that's really can be quite helpful for a woman. Also, in a woman with PCOS who's producing very high levels of testosterone and she's bothered by the effects this has on her skin and unwanted hair growth, then again, taking the combined one, which suppresses all the hormones, including testosterone, would be really helpful. So there are definitely medical situations where actually suppressing, well, those two mainly, where you suppressing those hormones is a really good idea. Mm-hmm. However, coming back to your question of how does this influence your sport performance? Well, the problem is that testosterone, like you mentioned in men, is for muscle building and same for women. So for some women, this might not be such a good choice to suppress all your hormones. I mean, we don't know for sure because, again, it will be according to the individual woman and we don't know. But nevertheless, you don't know. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is that if you suppress all your hormones, this could have negative effects on your bone health. There's actually a yellow card warning on giving the depot injection of progesterone for teenagers in the States because this suppresses all the hormones, prevents the mineralization of bones. So there's actually a warning on it. And there's a recent study out which shows actually, no surprise, same for the contraceptive pill, especially if you take it when you're young in the teenage years, this could have an adverse effect on bone health. So again, it's got to be a really nuanced approach. What's the objective for the woman? Why is she just after contraception? And has she considered all the possibilities? And also, what's her age? And the one place where you must never, I repeat, never give contraception that will suppress hormones is where the woman hasn't got cycles already. In other words, she's got functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, which means she has an imbalance in her training load and her nutritional intake. And so the body looks to save energy and it switches off her periods. And what her hormones will look, everything will be flat. I've just told you that taking some of these contraceptions will suppress all the hormones. So why would you want to reinforce that? No, you wouldn't. Unfortunately, nevertheless, it has been given historically because I know why. Everyone feels better. The doctor feels better written the prescription. The individual, the woman feels better because she says, oh, I'm having a bleed, but it's not a period. It's a withdrawal bleed. It's a fake one, right? Okay. And we know that is not bone protective because the bones don't like it. The bones realize this is fake stuff and just ignore it, you see. So certainly here in the UK last year, I'm really proud. I got NICE, National Institute of Clinical Excellence, to change the medical guidance. And if a woman has FHA, functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, no periods because of this imbalance, right? Yeah. Then it says quite clearly, do not give the contraceptive pill. Maybe you would consider, depending on her bone health, if she's got a very poor score from her DEXA scan that measures bone health, and or she's got many stress fractures. Actually, if you want to give bone protection, you would give HRT, hormone replacement therapy, estrogen and progesterone. Yeah. You would not give the pill because although, and this is the confusing thing, I think, Ellen, because people will be thinking, well, hold on a minute. If I read my box of the combined contraceptive pill, it says something, it's a word like estrogen and there's a word like progesterone. Surely that's got hormones in it. Yes, it has got hormones in it, but these are synthetic hormones and ones that the body, quite correctly, does not recognize, and especially the bones. They don't like that at all. They think, no, that's rubbish stuff. What's that? And this is why when you do, and a blood test measures the body, your body's hormones. That's why when you do the blood test, you will see your own hormones are all totally flat. Okay. So the ones that you take in the tablet, they just stop the pituitary from working and therefore the ovaries stop working. You see what I mean? So I just wanted to clarify that because people might be confused. Well, I'm taking hormonal contraception. Surely that's okay, isn't it? that's just replacing, but it's not, because it's different hormones to what your body usually produces and what it recognizes. Okay. And that can be a problem. And this is contrast to body identical HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which is the real thing. Right.
Okay, got it.
Okay, you see,
so HRT is real hormones, or
well, it depends.
It
it depends on which. It's true. It depends on which type of HRT you decide on. There are the more synthetic type ones, right, which are more similar to the kind of hormones in the pill. But nevertheless, the best one recommended by the British Menopause Society is the one, no surprise, where the hormones are identical. That's why it's called replacement. It's just replacing what you normally produce, you see.
Yeah. And you use the word retrieval bleeding. Can you explain what does it mean?
Yeah. So it means that it's a bit confusing, because some of the things some tissues in the body are fooled by the fake hormones in the contraceptive pill. This includes the pituitary gland, which thinks, oh, there's lots of this hormone, we don't have to work, we can have a rest. And also it does fool the endometrial lining, you see. So you take the pill, typically you would take it estrogen, progesterone, and then you have pill free, and you would have a withdrawal bleed then. So those synthetic hormones do increase the lining of the endometrium, hold it stable with progesterone, and then you withdraw it and it comes out. And that's withdrawal bleed. It's been induced by external hormones, as opposed to in the menstrual cycle, you are shedding the uterus lining, is true, but it's because of driven by your own internal hormones. So that's why we have different words for it to prevent this confusion. A menstruation or a menstrual period, that's because of your own hormones, and a withdrawal bleed is because of the synthetic ones.
Amazing. And then there's what do you think of the NuvaRing, like the vaginal insertion?
Yeah, and that's also combined. Yeah. So that's we should talk. I mean, the combined oral contraceptive pill is the most common one, but you're right. That ring also it's got the same stuff as the pill, so will have the same suppressive effect on your hormones.
Got it. And is there any difference the fact that it's locally
I think it's better. It's better. In general terms, it's always better if you can take medication that doesn't have to go through the gut. Because another consequence of taking the combined oral contraceptive pill is obviously you take it orally, obviously, and it goes through the liver. And we know that the liver, if you measure someone, the blood test, I saw it the other day, all the measurements on someone on the contraceptive pill, you will see a very high level of what's called sex hormone binding globulin produced by the liver. And this is what makes the testosterone lower, because that higher binding protein will grab any testosterone being produced and brings it down. That's why it's really good in PCOS. So yes, I think there is an advantage. If that's the type of contraception you want to use, then actually it would be better the ring rather than the oral form, because then you take the liver out of the equation and the gut out of the equation.
Okay, understood. And I'd like two more options. One is the taking your temperature, like what are your thoughts on that, together with Oura-ring, for instance, and then pull-out methods. What are your thoughts? Especially, like I imagine, obviously it depends of the individual choices. If you are 20 years old and you don't want to have a baby, having a healthy and fun sex life is important. You want to consider different options.
Exactly.
What are your medical thoughts on these options?
Withdrawal, well, it's a bit hit and miss, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't guarantee it. Yeah. Just use a condom.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you hear occasionally the condom splits, but generally it's 99% or 99. It's very effective, the condom, if used properly. So I wouldn't rely on the withdrawal method, frankly. And the temperature, the ovulation thermometer, like with Oura-ring and all these things like this, to take your ovulation thermometer, whatever, the principle is that temperature will slightly drop just before ovulation, then it will go high. So you can estimate where your fertile window is, a little bit either side of ovulation. And actually, if you have the thing is, if you have a regular cycle and you've monitored this, you can be pretty confident. Don't have unprotected sex here, because then you're quite likely to get pregnant, which also might be why you want to use it, if you're using it to try and get pregnant. So it can be very reliable. And actually, my mother tells me she used it and it was great, but she had regular cycles. So if you got really regular cycles and you really monitor it carefully, that's an option. But it's not so good for women whose periods are a little bit irregular, because it will go to vary from cycle to cycle. And when you thought you weren't fertile, you are, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit, it's okay. And it can be effectively used. And certainly I'm using it in research at the minute, because that's really useful if I want to confirm that I'm doing dances actually, and seeing the effect of their training on their menstrual cycle. And even if they're having a menstruation, a period, I want to check that their progesterone level is at a decent level. And so actually I am using the ovulation thermometer, but that's for a different reason.
For sure, yeah.
But I think these are possibilities, but again, it's being informed. Now we've talked through all those different things, which I hope was helpful, that people now go away and think, okay, they can choose which one is best for them with full knowledge. Because every time, there's still so many women who, I spoke to one the other day who said, I didn't realize, I was just told to take the contraceptive pill as a teenager. She had no idea that it suppressed all her hormones. She didn't realize that was going on. So I think we don't want any more of that. Everyone's got to make sure you're making an informed choice.
Amazing. And like, obviously I'm biased, because we believe in my company, AI, that being able to understand our natural menstrual cycle can have a positive outcome, especially in our performance. But what last question, what are your thoughts on that? And then also, where can we find you?
Sure. Well, ultimately, I'm trying not to be too biased about this, but ultimately you want to work with that female hormone goddess, don't you? Yeah. These hormones are amazing, powerful things. And so actually, absolutely, tracking your cycle, getting to know your cycle, getting to know what your hormones are doing, getting to know what you feel like, that can be really, really empowering. And certainly, like the dance company I work with and other athletes, I really super encourage them, if they're not already, definitely track your cycle, make your own notes, get to know your cycle, because then it can be really helpful. You can then try out things that are going, if there is a problematic time in your cycle, you can work out what's going to work before the opening night of Swan Lake. There's nothing worse. You step on stage and you think, oh my God, you've got everything prepared. It's the same for an athlete. Yeah. As an athlete, you're going to prepare. If you're doing a cycle race, you've got your bike, you've got your shoes, you've got your helmet, you've got your tactics. Everything is prepared. But what about your body? Have you prepared yourself? Have you worked out, where you're going to be more or less in your cycle and what to do to work to your strength, but also to be ready for any, the things that can be problematic? Have you tried that out beforehand? You would never walk into a race and start having a new energy gel, would you? Hopefully.
New shoes.
Or new shoes or something. You wouldn't, would you? Yeah. So why would you? Of course, you've got to practice that as well with your cycle. So personally, I totally agree with you. I think make the most of your female hormone goddess. Of course, those that wish to choose hormonal contraception, fine. I'm not saying don't, but just be informed of that. But otherwise, if it's for the reason that you want to get away from your cycle, actually, maybe I would suggest a different approach. Try and go with it and understand it and rejoice in it.
Dr. Nicky Keay, thank you so much. I love what you said. The Greek goddess of effort, energy, and action is like the hormones. And where can we find you? So you wrote a book. Tell us about the book, your social medias. And I mean, for me, you're such an inspiration. So I want everyone to be able to follow you and read your book as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I've written a book called Hormones, Health, and Human Potential. It's available on Amazon.
Behind.
And that's basically putting down everything I have got to learn about hormones over all these 30 years or so. It's a long time anyway. So I invite everyone to have a look there. I've written it. You can read it. You don't have to be medically trained to read it. In fact, my mother-in-law read it. and she's not medically trained. And she said, oh, yes, I really enjoyed it, because she could see the comparisons I was making with the orchestra and the instruments of the orchestra. She said, oh, I get it. So if one of these instruments is out of tune, it can throw the whole thing. It's like, exactly. So I've written it in that way. So please have a look at the book, and I hope you find that useful and interesting. Also, I've got my website, Nicky Keay Fitness, spelled Keay, fitness.com, where I put blogs and things like this. I offer virtual appointments to women and men wanting to, harness their hormones. What am I doing? What can I suggest to help them reach their full potential? So I offer appointments, and I do lots of talks and presentations. I put it all on there on my website, and also social media. I'm all the various things you might expect at Dr Nicky, Nicky Keay. Thank you so much again for inviting me, and yes, I hope people go and enjoy the book and look at what I'm doing, and come and listen into the presentation or webinar or whatever I'm doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicky. What is the future of performance? My name is Hélène Guillaume. I'm the founder and CEO of Wild AI, the performance platform for women, and your host for the Performance Podcast. I'm an athlete, a data scientist, studied mathematics, and I was a quant in a hedge fund. Through my career, I met incredible humans pushing the boundaries of what performance means, physically, mentally. I'm obsessed with the idea of the ultra-human. If you understand yourself deeply, what happens inside, if you understand the rules, how you function, you can go beyond. I liked experiencing and playing with my own body on that. Running 100K ultramarathons, swimming in ice at 5:30 a.m. Just find it really fun to play on the edge testing. Because if you know the rules, you can go wild. And that's where our company names come from. Wild AI. With data, analytics, ultra personalization, we take you in a journey to understand the basics of your own body as a woman. How it works, why do I feel the symptoms? Is there a pattern? Can I track it, see correlations? Approaching our bodies like time series patterns. Yes, having been a quant in a hedge fund has formatted my brain. I'm in this journey of exploring what it means for myself, and we are so many in this research journey. And this show is me exploring the next frontier. What is performance? What do humans do around biohacking, tracking, life hacks, health optimization? So, what can you expect to learn? I'm going to be interviewing people that are shaping these new worlds. Athletes, doctors, entrepreneurs, building groundbreaking technologies, biohackers testing on themselves, really shaping the future of performance. It can be hard to navigate this yourself, so let me be your guide. See you in the next episode.